Hi, everyone. It's Marcy. Um, I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about parenting and co-parenting with you. On a previous video and in a couple of the interviews I've done recently on podcasts, I've talked a little bit about parenting, motherhood, etc. And I thought I would just sort of elaborate on that a little bit here. From the time that we're going to do a little backtrack, but I'm going to be as quick as possible. From the time that I was a very tiny young girl, maybe 5, 6 years old, I knew, or younger, I knew that I wanted to be a mom. It was something that I felt intrinsically part of my makeup as a person. And that never changed. As I got older, I was a teenager and a young adult, I knew I wanted to be a mom even more than I knew I wanted to be in a committed spousal relationship with a husband. The maternal piece was so strong for me. And so my ex-husband and I got married, and then a couple of years after we got married, we had our son in 1998, and then 3 years later, our daughter was born. And I was one of those moms who felt complete, who felt like this was one of the things I was put on this earth to do. And I loved every second of being pregnant. I felt like an Amazon queen. If I could build a pancreas, I could do anything. And I felt empowered and amazing that I was in charge of the awesome responsibility and honor of the care and nurturing of these two perfect little beautiful lives that I held in my arms and nursed at my breast. And there wasn't anything that I wanted to do more than that, and there wasn't anything that I thought was more important to be excellent at. It wasn't good enough for me to just be a good mom. I wanted to be an exceptional mom, and I think I am. My kids are great, thank goodness. They're doing very well for themselves, and they're making me proud every day. But it was tough to get them there. So my ex-husband and I got married. We had 2 kids, 1998 and then 2001. And then in 2006, we separated. And in 2007, we got divorced. So one kid was 7 and one kid was 4 or 6 and 10 or 6 and 9. I can't do math. And then we were co-parenting, and we were sharing the responsibilities of raising the children and sharing the time that we each got to be with them. And that was extremely hard. I didn't become a mom to do it part-time, and I knew that getting the divorce from their father was the best thing that I could do for myself, but it was also the best thing I could do for them. The moment I realized that not only was my marriage abysmally unhappy for me, but that as a relationship, as a template for a relationship, as a template for a marriage, this was not what I wanted for either of my children. I didn't want them to ever be in a relationship like the one that I had with their dad. And I didn't want my daughter to grow up feeling like this was how she was supposed to expect to be treated by significant others in her life. And I didn't want my son to grow up to feel like this was how he should be treating girlfriends or significant others in his life. And so it just really seemed like, in order to save all of us, that the divorce had to happen. And so we got a divorce. It was, as non-confrontational as divorces could be, I suppose. I mean, there were some very dicey, scary moments, but for the most part, we took it apart with the kids in mind. I found myself a therapist when I knew we were getting divorced, so that I could keep my laser focus on making every single one of my decisions about taking care of them. So we decided very early on that although we were going to sell the marital residence because we couldn't afford to keep that and have one of us live separately, and then it would have just been very strange. So we sold the marital residence and we each got separate houses in the same town that we lived in, because it was important to not shake up the kids' lives more than we had to. So sure, their home life was going to change a bit because mommy and daddy were going to be living in separate houses and they were going to go back and forth between the houses. But if we could keep both of those houses in the same town and they could both go to school, knock the table over, and they could both go to school from each of their parents' houses, and their friends didn't change, and their Girl Scout and Boy Scout troops didn't change, and the dance classes didn't change, and they could still do karate in the exact same place. And so all of the other external things stayed the same. I think what we wound up doing was minimizing the amount of shock and minimizing the amount of havoc in their lives. And it was havoc and crazy and chaotic enough without changing all of those other things. But I think having them be the focus and their needs being the focus really not only helped us minimize the amount of drama and, divorce stupidity that husbands and wives or ex-husbands and ex-wives get involved with each other. I think it eliminated a lot of the escalation of chaos and toxicity because we were really focusing on keeping it peaceful for the kids. Now, it wasn't always, and there were issues. I'm not going to paint a picture of, a cute little rose garden. There were plenty of thorns. We had fights and there were problems. We didn't get along married. So I would imagine that 90% of couples, and I'm making statistics up off the top of my head, but I would imagine that 90% of couples who get divorced because they don't get along well and therefore aren't going to get along well when they're divorced either. It's kind of just the way it goes. I know there were exceptions to that rule, and I know quite a few people who have managed to be friends with their ex and so on, but that wasn't in the cards for us. But I think part of what made me successful as a mom and what has made my kids successful in navigating their own lives and in problem solving and learning emotional intelligence was the power I gave them to navigate their own issues. My daughter comes home, let's just say there was one day that she came home, she was in 4th grade, and she came home and she said, my best friend, Beth and Samantha suddenly aren't talking to me because I want to be friends with Carly and they don't want to be friends with Carly and they're trying to get me to not be friends with Carly. And I'm thinking, oh my God, the drama is starting now. It starts already. She's only 4th grade. That's crazy. And I was expecting, a huge landslide or a huge waterfall of tears. And what I got from her arms akimbo was, well, if they don't want me to be friends with Carly, that's tough on them because I can be friends with whoever I want. And if they're giving me grief over it, then they're not really my friends. And I was like, yes, awesome, totally true. She's got it. There were moments where your boys have much less drama in their lives, but there were moments in both of their lives that were like that, where, they proved that they had internalized a lot of the life lessons that I had given them and a lot of the emotional intelligence to know how they felt about things. And they could articulate to me, with a little coaxing, of course, sometimes, but they could articulate to me how they felt about something or how their feelings were hurt or how frustrated they were about X, Y, and Z, or unsure or anxious or extra vulnerable or whatever it was. And we'd problem solve. Well, how do you think you should do that? And what do you think you should say? And okay, so if you do that, what do you think are the options, the possibilities of how that other person is going to react? And then what do you do about that? And we would talk about these scenarios together. And then I would send them in with those tools and the knowledge of that conversation to go into school the next day and try to solve the problem, whether it was with a teacher or it was with a friend of theirs or an acquaintance at school. And they always knew, you try first, and if that doesn't work, then, and you don't get the results that you want, then come home and talk to me, and then I'll be your backup. I was, the backup and the mop up, and most of the time they didn't need it. I gave them the tools and we practiced ahead of time, and they went in and they handled it. And I think that gave them a very strong sense of self-efficacy, a very strong sense of esteem and confidence in trusting their inner voice, in trusting their ability to open their mouths and advocate for themselves. And that blueprint, as they were in later elementary years and middle school and high school, really did a huge amount in having kids who grew up to not only know how to handle themselves, but have the confidence in themselves that they would be able to handle the unexpected and be flexible and still keep up healthy boundaries and be strong and advocate for themselves. And that went a huge, long way in not only creating those things for themselves, but in fostering that kind of open, communicative, accepting, non-judgmental relationship that we had together. My son went away to college. He's now in graduate school. So he went away to college 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 50, whatever, 4 or 5 years ago. And, he'd have disagreement with his friends, and he'd call me, and we would do the same sort of problem solving scenario, and he'd go, okay, and he'd hang up and he'd handle it himself. I wasn't stepping in. He's 20 years old. He's having a fight with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend left, and he calls me on the phone. He says, we fought and I don't know what to do, and this is what she said, and this is what I said, and this is how I feel, and what do I do? And I would give him my scenario. Okay, this is what I think. This is what girls tend to mean when they say things like that, but I don't know her as well as you do. So, what do you think? And then we'd talk about scenarios and back and forth and what to do. And then he would go and do it and report back if he wanted to, or he felt like he wanted to. And most of the time he did. And he'd call back or text back, and he'd say, oh, that was great. This is what happened. This worked. Or I didn't take your advice because we wound up doing this and we were talking, and which is fine. They don't have to take my advice. I'm not my own mom. My mom used to get pissed at me if I didn't take her advice or her opinion as fact, but that's ridiculous. And my daughter's the same way. She'll call me from school or text me from school. She's got X, Y, and Z problem. And how do you fix it? How do I do it? What do I do? Who do I talk to? What do I say? What happens if? And we work through scenarios, and then she goes and handles it. And each time they get practice, and each time they get better at handling those things. And then eventually they don't need me anymore, or they need me differently. That's really the thing. They're always going to need me. I have to remember that myself. If I could go back and relive any one day in my life, I would pick a day, a summer day when no one was sick, when Nina was 4 and my son was 7 or 3 and 6. I don't care. Something like that. I would love to just have them small, just one more day. But, I had to have to remember that just because they're taller than me, and both of them are, doesn't mean they need me less than they used to. They just need me differently. In fact, they need me to be consistent and available and around, and to do the same kinds of responsive role-playing advice, non-judgmental appearances in their lives that I have always been doing. And it makes us all safe and happy. My daughter and I, I'll stand up to show you, have 2 matching tattoos. We've got this one that says in omnia paratus, which is Latin for ready for all things, and an infinity heart. And we have them both on our arms. And just because we're so close, and we just both really wanted it. In omnia paratus comes from its roots in Latin, but through the TV show The Gilmore Girls, which Nina and I and my sister are kind of, well, in no uncertain terms, addicted to. It's always on every single day in our house. It's on at least some point. And so it factors into that show quite a bit. And Ready for All Things was just we're ready for all things with each other. We're just always in it. and the infinity heart is self-explanatory. We'll love each other forever, and it's just the most amazing thing. I have a better relationship with my parents, with my children, than my parents had with me, ever. And speaking to them intelligently and giving them emotional intelligence tools and behavioral management tools, and giving them safe practice with backup throughout their whole lives, and putting their needs first when making big life decisions really helped. So if any of you are facing a crossroads with your kids or a difficult time, don't lose hope. Just be consistent, and talk to your friends who are parents. Write to me, or if you would like to. And I'm happy to give advice. I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist, but I've been in and out of therapy for 40 years, 36 years-ish. I'm a parent of a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, and I have a lot of stories, but I can speak to what my experience is and what I've learned along the way. And I've been a teacher, a high school English teacher for 25 years. This will be my 26th year going in. So I've seen a lot of kids. There was one year I taught 3-year-olds in preschool, which was not for me. Adorable, but too much. So that's kind of it. If you're going through a divorce, I'm sorry. My heart breaks for you and your family, but sometimes taking apart a marriage that shouldn't ever have happened, or just deteriorated beyond repair, is the best thing that you can do for everyone. Not only you and your soon-to-be ex-spouse, but any kids and family who are involved. I know that from experience. I do not regret that decision at all. And the way we took it apart, putting the kids' needs first, was the ideal way to do it. I think it had the fewest negative repercussions and didn't cost us tens of thousands of dollars in lawyer fees and court fees and so on. It was $5,000 and we were done in less than 6 months. So anyway, so that's that. Parenting, it's a difficult job, the toughest job you're ever going to love. Anyway, comments, likes, questions, anything, do it down below. Find me on my socials, Instagram at Marcy Brockman or Marcy Brockman 27, Facebook at Marcy527. You can email me at marcybrockman@gmail.com. You can leave comments below this video. You can join me on my Facebook group, Permission to Heal, Safe to Fly. And stay tuned for more What's Up Marcy videos. Love you all soon. Love you all very much. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.